Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
We're good. I'm good. How's the week so far?
You really want to know, or are you just asking us that?
No, I really want to know. No, I'm not the type of person who asks and just because it's good to do. I want to know.
Rough. We working hard.
Same here.
My week was actually good because I picked up my degree today.
Yay!
Congrats.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you.
What did you get a degree in?
Accounting. So I'm officially a BBA holder in accounting.
Oh wow, cool.
Way to go.
See, the whole world in a war. Alicia getting degrees, y'all. Ebony, not everybody working hard. Me and you working hard, and look like Felicia working hard.
I work
but-
hard. I feel like I work for the full month this week.
Oh
That's
Lord.
been my week. Yeah, that kind of week.
Ah my. I haven't had a rough week for work, but I've been very busy. I got a lot going on.
Okay. In addition to that, my baby is still not well, so all that has me, yeah. So
Oh, you're never 100% when your kids aren't feeling well.
I know, right? So
Yeah.
mhm.
How about the rest of y'all? It's a three-way conversation and plenty of y'all online. How was y'all's week? Y'all see the world going crazy?
I
Y'all
do
ain't
see.
Yeah, we scared. We
answering
scared.
me?
We can't go to war
Scared of
without.
what?
I saw, I don't know how much of it was like a parody or something, but I saw an article say the world's top 10 worst militaries. And the Bahamas was number 10.
You kidding?
So we
It
can't go to
was
war.
a parody. It was they ain't want nothing from us, man.
No, we don't want nothing from them.
Yeah, we
Well,
ain't
I
in
mean,
it.
We ain't beating the bag. I'm sorry.
For all y'all who drink vodka, y'all want something from them because that's where vodka originated.
Nah, we can do without vodka. We'll find something else.
Okay, cool. How's the paper writing going? Because this unit 5, my phone, who y'all blow it up this week and last week, unit 5 should have answered at least some of the questions. No? Yes?
Yeah, I'm looking
Hold on,
forward.
Pardon?
If I'm being honest, I'm struggling, and not because of what you didn't teach or did teach, it's because of me. So I need to like really tighten my belt. That's me. It's me. So
Come on, let's
That's my-
go. Let's do this.
I know,
Assignment 1 is due in less than a month.
and that is frightening me.
We
I'm
gotta
like,
do
oh, it's March. It's March, and I'm yeah,
March.
yeah.
Anybody
I'ma get-
else? In the
Gotta
same
do.
queue as Ebony? Yeah, Ebony, you gotta get started, girl. I gotta pump you. You gotta get started. You gotta do this. Anybody
Yes,
else
ma'am.
feel like being honest and admitting that they're in Ebony's shoes?
I'm semi-struggling. I think it's weirdly enough, the last 2 questions, C and D, I thought would have been harder for me, but it's actually the terrorism question because I'm kind of torn. I wasn't able to stay the whole class last week because my daughter was actually not feeling well, so I had to tend to her. And like I've explained to like 2 people in the class already, my issue is like, I feel like terrorism is kind of similar based on the legislations that I've read from like 3 or 4 different countries. Like they have similar wording, or like keywords that are the same, but it isn't like a standard, I guess, like where it's word for word. So that for me has me kind of torn that, okay, it kind of is universally, you know, the same, but not exactly. I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Like my brain just isn't working for that particular question. So I'm struggling with that one.
Me too.
You're overthinking it. You're overthinking it. Remember, I don't know if you're all in the chat or you all check the chat, but I said earlier that it was all to see where you are analytically. They tell you up front there's no universal description of it, right? So based on what you would have read, they want you to deduce something. Yeah? So you're all overthinking it. You're all trying to get this perfect answer. You gotta think about what the question says. Think about what the question already tells you, which is there ain't no universal description, and then go from that basis. You're trying to go from ground zero, but they already have you up to the 10th floor. Build on what the question has asked you.
Makes
Ebony,
sense.
check the chat, please.
Okay, ma'am.
Because for me, like I was saying, okay, there isn't really a universal, like the question said, but like, I don't know. I just,
The minute you say but, Alicia, you just threw away everything you said before the but. No, it's they told you there's no universal. So just take them at their word.
Because they're asking like why, right? Like why isn't there a universal,
but once
universally
you've read,
accepted?
But if you've read if you've read definitions from a few countries, then you have to deduce why. Yeah.
What I came up with was that I guess, and it could be, I don't want it to be a shallow answer. That's probably why I'm overthinking it, because what I came up with was that the laws of each country is different. You know what I mean?
Hello,
so
somebody, point number one.
Yeah, like what would be a crime in one country may not be a crime in another country. So I don't know. I'm working through it.
How is that shallow?
It feels
That's
shallow.
not shallow. That's analytical thinking.
My UB lecturers would be like, my UB lecturers would be putting all kind of red marks on my answer, basically. So I don't know. I'm probably overthinking it for real, like you said. But I don't know. I wanted something deeper.
You are. It's not deep. It's analytical. There's no right or wrong answer. That's exactly. They want you to come up with what you have deduced. It's not yes or no or in between. It's this is what it is. What do you think? How do you see this based on the facts that we've given you? Y'all trying to be all deep. Don't get deep because you're gonna get bogged down. Start writing, start letting it flow, and then you're gonna be able to move from there. And then as you reread and you go back, then you're going to know, okay, this is what I think about it. This is what I've come up with. This is my analytical skills being put to use. I thought my lawyers were gonna be having problems with this. Attorneys, y'all good?
I feel like they're the best ones equipped for this because they know law. That's why I feel like I'm probably struggling because
I'll admit, I think for me, question one is the most difficult. I find that 2, 3, and 4, I'm able to really kind of work through it. But question one, because there's so many, I guess, different ways you can go with this. It's I won't say complex, but I'm just trying to figure out how to properly structure it. So I've jotted things down. I have a lot of words down, but like I need to kind of bring it together and put it together. But I do find that this one is the hardest one, I think, in my opinion, as well.
I realized that if I try to go too wide, I would have ended up with too much information. So instead of going wide, I went deep and tried to really, I picked like 3 or 4 different places and then, went to the FATF for their guidelines as to what the definition should be. And I just kind of stuck it there.
Thank you, Rashada.
And I thought that the lawyers were going to have the challenge, but and she said it pretty well. You just have to contain it. You can't go all over the place. But you have to also read the definitions from various countries so that you can have the ability, when you read recommendation 5, to realize what it's saying. Alicia, you're trying to cover the whole world, baby. Don't try to cover the whole world. We only trying to cover a couple things.
That's because I'm panicking about this. 40% thing is a pass. So I'm really trying to do my best. So it's a lot. But thank you guys for the words that you said.
Just for clarification, because I would have read the handbook in terms of the pass mark. So it seems as if and Ms. Sands, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It seems as if a 40 is a pass for the paper, but overall, when they look at the 3 papers, you have to have 50 or above. That's my understanding of what the handbook is saying. Am I wrong or correct in that?
That's what I think it is, because it's cumulative. So
Yeah, exactly.
No, I
Sorry, you're breaking up.
think you're correct, because you can get a 40 on a paper and pass, but you can't get 40 on all 3, saying that you can get 40 on a paper and still pass, but you cannot get 40 on all 3 papers and pass. It has to be a cumulative amount for you to pass.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Higher
clarify
than
that
40.
because I know some people were saying 40 to pass, but you require, I guess, in total out of the 3 papers, 50 and above to officially, I guess, pass the course.
Correct.
So that means
Or
we gotta
else you-
aim
or
for
you
at
have to do a
least 50 on these
reset.
papers. Okay.
Well, I mean, you all need to be aiming for at least 60. Why y'all aiming for 50?
Yeah. No, 60 on each paper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say this paper, because of how it's written, try to aim for 70 because you can get it. It's 4 questions. You know exactly where they want you to go. It isn't like this is 1 question that's worth 100 marks and you ain't sure where you're going to pick up marks. You know exactly where you're going to go with these questions, because I know my class, not this last class, the class before that, they had an assignment that was worth 100%. And I can tell you, a lot of them did miserably on that because they didn't know where to get, like where they were going to pick up points. You know what I mean? So now that you guys know, if you know each question is worth 25, you could reasonably estimate based on the amount of work you put in, what you can get on each question.
Ms. Sands. Hi, question. For question 1, terrorism. Okay, so I noticed the first part of the question, they're talking about the FATF recommendation and the interpretive notes. And then the second part of the question, they're talking about the definition, right? My question is, should I briefly speak on the FATF recommendation perhaps in the introductory part? Because I'm finding that in order to, because they're saying that my answer towards the definition should be based on criminalizing terrorism, which is what the FATF recommendation says. So I'm finding it difficult not to touch on the recommendation in my intro, as to say to move on to criminalizing it and then the definition.
Let me give you my response. My response would be, why would you waste words?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? If you want to stick a 1-line sentence in there, maybe, but trust me, when you start writing, you get to 850 in no time.
That's not happening with this first question.
That's because you all ain't flowing. That's all that is. Once you start flowing, for me, you don't need to regurgitate anything that's already in the book, right? So it's already criminalized. We know that. That's a part of the actual question, right? It speaks to in the context of the criminalization of terrorist financing. So the question already tell you it's criminalized. You don't need to go into, oh, part of recommendation criminalizes it. it's already criminalized.
Mhm.
They say attempt to define terrorism. Remember, that's an important word, attempting, right? If you attempt to do something, that ain't actually mean you doing it a full 100, yes?
Mhm.
You're trying.
You're trying, and that's why I keep telling you all, they want your analytical skills, because you could attempt and answer the question one way, and I could attempt and answer it another way. None of us are incorrect, because we're already building on the foundation that it's criminalized, yes? And then it's asking you all to explain and illustrate. We talked about what happens when you have to explain and illustrate, yeah? You given your explanations and you illustrating by doing what?
Given examples.
Exactly. And all you're doing is trying to prove the point where they're saying it ain't universally, there's no universally acceptable consensus on the definition. That is they've told you what conclusion that they want you to come to. You understand?
Okay.
And
Mhm.
this is why I was saying y'all don't need to be so deep.
When you
They
say
tell
it
you all
though,
the conclusion.
when you say it, it sounds so simple.
I
But
say
then
the
when I
same.
decide to put that paper to the pen, I mean the pen to the paper, it's, oh my gosh.
Okay, so
Yes,
sorry.
For me,
ma'am.
I've been doing this for 18 years, so I could explain it, I could break it down. I really don't expect y'all to have the verbiage that I have, but I'm trying to give you as simple as I can give you how to get to an answer. They've already given you a conclusion, yes?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
They're not trying to get you to sway from that. They've told you. But they want you to tell them why. This is how it is. And Alicia, when you talked about different countries have different laws, like that's where you're supposed to be thinking. You're supposed to be analyzing the whole world in black and white. Some must be colored, yes? But tell me why you think I gray and the next person blue. Y'all trying to get deep. This question isn't as difficult as y'all think it is. David, the way that I said it, did you understand it?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, yes, I understand it. Yeah.
Right, so if they already tell you that's the conclusion they want you to come to, it ain't much you could do with you. One, you attempting to do something, yes? Two,
Yeah.
you explaining why you have attempted it that way. And then three, you're using illustrations, and your illustrations are going to be tied to the fact that there is no universally acceptable consensus.
Yes.
It's not difficult. If you break it down the way that I just said it, you will see that it makes sense based on what you would have read or what we're going to go through in Unit 5 tonight.
Correct.
Now, somebody was saying something that I didn't let them finish. Was that you, Saunders?
No, I was gonna ask you if I could give you a brief idea of where I was heading with my question.
Okay, let's do that at the end of the class. But I just wanted, because this question, y'all been in my chat all week, but this one question and this the unit we on tonight, I kind of opened it up. But let's discuss like individual ones at the end of the class, okay? We'll save some time for that.
Okay.
Cool? Because some other things may come up during class that may answer the questions that you have, or will cause you to see that you're either in the right direction or maybe you should change some things.
Okay.
Make sense?
Cool.
Yeah? Okay, everybody cool with that? We good?
Good to go.
All right, let's do this. So who reading my learning objectives tonight? Because if you all read Unit 5, a lot of this is about extracts. A lot of it is not necessarily content. It's just examples. Yes? Did y'all see that?
Yes.
Or what, was I the only person to see that when I prepared for today?
No.
Okay, now you're on the
Saw that.
side, y'all won't go quiet on me.
No, I didn't realize I was on mute, sorry.
Y'all realize there's a lot of examples, right?
Yes.
ma'am.
A lot of examples.
And extracts, right? So if you read this chapter from start to finish, you can literally write at least 2/3 of your paper.
Yep.
And that's just from me preparing.
Ms. Sands, your internet or your thing, it's kind of cutting in and out. It's difficult to hear you.
Oh Lord, the devil busy tonight. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Can you hear
can.
me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I live in the back of God's back, so y'all know services in certain areas in Nassau, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did y'all hear what I say before the cutting in and out thing? I was saying if you,
Completed 2/3 of the paper?
When you
Yeah.
said chapter
if you,
5,
yeah, because the
Yes,
amount of
ma'am.
examples and extracts that are in this unit, you can come to a relatively easy conclusion as to why there's no universal consensus. Because there are various countries listed in here, and you could see what each of them are doing, or have said, or is saying. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so somebody read for me what the learning objectives are, so at the end of the class, we can know if we've met them.
I'm going to read.
Thank you, Estelle.
The purpose of this unit is to, 1, consider international and regional strategies to counter terrorism financing and how they interface with domestic strategies. 2, examine the characteristics and sources of terrorism financing. 3, examine how terrorist funds are moved. 4, explain what is meant by proliferation financing. Is that 6? Explain what is meant by dual use items in the context of proliferation financing. The last one, consider the risks that arise from weapons proliferation financing.
Thank you, Estelle. So now I want someone else to read for me the definition of terrorism. And this is going to go back to the conversation we had earlier. And we're going to read it from different parts of the same chapter. Main of the volunteers to read this definition. Thanks, Ms. Sanders.
Terrorism. The definition of terrorism is often debated on an international basis, and this lack of a single unified definition has created challenges in combating terrorism and the financing of terrorism. There are a variety of definitions and some gray areas regarding the interpretation, depending on the type of act. Terrorism, one generic version is below. Terrorism is the use or threats use of action, both in and outside of the UK, designed to influence or any international government organization or to intimidate the public. It must also be for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, racial, or ideological cause. Terrorist individuals and organizations require revenue to finance their operations, and also the weapons and military devices to conduct their operations. In this section, we will look at terrorism financing and the subject of weapons of mass destruction, and so-called dual-use goods. The term proliferation was first used by the Financial Action Task Force in the 40 recommendations in February 2012, and is commonly used to explain the financing of weapons of mass destruction and dual-use goods. Recommendation 5 of the FATF recommendations. Recommendation 5 of the FATF recommendation states that terrorist financing offense. Countries should criminalize terrorist financing on the basis of terrorist financing conventions, and should criminalize not only the financing of terrorist acts, but also the financing of terrorist organizations and individual terrorists Even in the absence of a link to a specific terrorist act or acts, countries should ensure that such offenses are designated as money laundering predicate offenses. Recommendation 5 was developed with the objective of ensuring that countries have the legal capacity to prosecute and apply criminal sanctions to persons that finance terrorism. Given the close connection between international terrorism and inter alia money laundering, and another objective of Recommendation 5 is to emphasize this link by obligating countries to include terrorist financing offenses as predicate offenses for money laundering. In particular, okay.
No, you can stop right there. So before we go on, so just reading all of that, did you get a sense of, oh my God, these people on the same page? Wasn't that like a mouthful?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Someone
Yes,
pull
it was.
everybody on a different page in a sense.
Exactly. And so when you get, I think that's why you're getting all tripped up, because it's like, oh my God, they're all over the place. But they're not asking you to be concerned about the all over the placeness. That's already a fact. They're asking you to try and prove to them that you know why, that there's no universal consensus. That's what question 1 is about. Yes, we got a million things going on over there, but you tell me why ain't nobody can come up with no one global universal definition. That is all question 1 is asking you to do. Now you see why, Ms. Hepburn, I said it doesn't make sense to go into and explain the interpretive note, because that's
Right.
only going to add words. That's not necessarily going to add any value.
Right.
Yeah?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so somebody, let's read for me. And I don't normally read in class, but I think that because this question is the most challenging one, let's read what the interpretive notes say, and then we will stop reading from after that. So let's read, somebody read for me all of the points, the 12 points in the interpretive notes. You can read for me, Ms. Hepburn, please.
One second.
Okay, it's on page 195 and then over to 196. Thank you.
Okay. The interpretive note to recommendation 5 states that 1, recommendation 5 was, well, somebody already read this. I feel like I repeat myself. This part of it, somebody already read?
Yes, I read one already.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're reading in particular, the following characteristics for terrorism financing offense are identified, and then you go from there.
Okay, in particular, the following characteristics for a terrorism financing offense are identified. 2, terrorist financing offenses should extend to any person who willfully provides or collects funds or other assets by any means, directly or indirectly, with the unlawful intention that they should be used or in the knowledge that they are to be used in full or in part, A, to carry out a terrorist act, B, by a terrorist organization, or C, by an individual terrorist. 3, terrorist financing includes financing the travel of individuals who travel to a state other than their states of residence or nationality for the purpose of perpetrating, planning, or preparation of or participation in terrorist acts or the providing or receiving of terrorist training. 4, criminalizing terrorist financing solely on the basis of aiding and abetting attempt or conspiracy is not sufficient to comply with this recommendation. 5, terrorist financing offenses should extend to any funds or other assets, whether from a legitimate or illegitimate source. 6, terrorist financing offenses should not require that the funds or other assets, A, were actually used to carry out or attempt a terrorist act, or B, be linked to a specific terrorist act or acts. 7, countries should ensure that the intent and knowledge required to prove the offense of terrorist financing may be inferred from objective factual circumstances. 8, effective, proportionate, and persuasive criminal sanctions should apply to natural persons convicted of terrorist financing. 9, criminal liability and sanctions, and where that is not possible due to fundamental principles of domestic law, civil or administrative liability and sanctions should apply to legal persons. They should not preclude parallel criminal, civil, or administrative proceedings with respect to legal persons in countries in which more than one form of liability is available. Such measures should be without prejudice to the criminal liability of natural persons. All sanctions should be effective, proportionate, and dissuasive. It's a lot of legal jargon. 10, it should also be an offense to attempt to commit the offense of terrorist financing. 11, it should also be an offense to engage in any of the following types of conduct. A, participating as an accomplice in an offense as set forth in paragraphs 2 or 9 of this interpretive note. B, organizing or directing others to commit an offense as set forth in paragraphs 2 or 9 of this interpretive note. C, contributing to the commission of one or more offenses as set forth in paragraphs 2 or 9 of this interpretive note by a group of persons acting with a common purpose. Such contribution shall be intentional and shall either, 1, be made with the aim of furthering the criminal activity or criminal purpose of the group, where such activity or purpose involves the commission of a terrorist financing offense, or 2, be made in the knowledge of the intention of the group to commit a terrorist financing offense. 12, terrorist financing offenses should apply regardless of whether the person alleged to have committed the offense is in the same country or a different country from the one in which the terrorist organization is located, or the terrorist act occurred or will occur.
Thank you so much for reading. That's a lot, right? And so,
Yeah.
Alicia, when you said what you said about the laws, you see how it's just so much like differentiation, because if you in this state, the next state, in this place, the next place, you see why they can't have one consensus. And you hit it on the head when you said different countries, different laws, different rules, right?
Yes.
It's like it's based on interpretation of how all of this is interpreted to each country.
Yes. Because if we're talking about the Bahamas, right? We have a bunch of islands, small islands. We're an island state nation, right? We laughed and we joked. And when I worked Bay Street years ago, I always said to them, the Bahamas ain't no place to have no terrorist act. And we said it in jest because, first of all, we got to stop for breakfast, so we ain't gonna be on time. Second of all, we ain't trying to strap nothing to us to blow ourselves up, because I can tell you do it, but I ain't doing it. And then you could figure, wait, she doing it, but I ain't doing it. So like we joke and we said a lot of things in jest, but a lot of it too has to deal with culture and country and the mindset and all of those things. So when you think about terrorists, you're not even it's just not even an act, right? Because a lot of times when you think about the jihadists and the other people, that they do certain things for religious purposes, right? They think they're gonna get there 721, how much ever, virgin brides or whatever it is. So it's not necessarily always just about a specific, oh, that's a terrorist. Anybody can be a terrorist. It's based on what it is that you do or intend to do. Yes?
Right.
And you can't
sounds like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you can't just generalize. You can't just say, oh, all Muslims are terrorists. No, they're not. That's a religion. Yeah?
Yes, thankfully, all the legislation that I read too, they just criticize religion or anything where you would try to coerce or, like, I guess, intimidate the government or, like stuff like that. It wasn't really like targeted towards just Muslims, like everything was definitely generalized.
The act of terrorism has to have both the mens rea and the actus rea, right? You just can't have the mind to do it. You have to have the action or try or attempt to have the action, just like any other crime. So generally, based on the legislation in many countries, that's not easy to say. We know what fraud is, right? Fraud have a definition, right? we know what stealing is. Stealing has a definition, but because the way the terrorist and terrorism is known, that's why there's no real global consensus on a definition, because it means different things to different people in different countries. If you call in a bomb call in this country, to me, that's a terrorist act. Because what are you trying to do? What's the intent? Now, if you call in a bomb call to another country, that might just be a big joke for them. Yes? Donna, what were you going to say?
As I was reading, it seems like the general consensus on what is considered terrorism motive seems to be more on a political sense, which I think mostly political and religious. But in reading some of the other interpretations, some of the other definitions, I think the fact that other countries and some other, because in the US alone, the US has like 4 or 5 different definitions that I read, but I understand it to be more. But it goes a little deeper than that. And like you said, at the end of the day, some countries may not be seeing certain things as terrorism, while other countries may, because when I read one that talked about environmental, in my mind, I was trying to figure out, okay, why would somebody make an environmental motive a terrorist act? I mean, what are you fighting for in terms of environmental? But all of these things and 1 or 2 definitions that I read, they had environmental, well, racial, we know sometimes racial can get, to that point. But the one with environmental, I was trying to wrap my head around that one, but some countries may see that as an issue, where other countries, the same way I'm looking at it, may not understand how an environmental motive can become a terrorist act.
And hence you have the conclusion that they have told us there's no global consensus of a definition, because we just been all over the place. Go ahead, Alicia.
Sorry.
No, I went to quickly say, I think the environmental thing for them was because they specifically said that anything where you would try to persuade the government to do something. So maybe like the reason they may be protesting or anything like environmental, it may seem frivolous, but their intent is to try to change maybe a law or something. So I think that part, like, I'm not a lawyer now, but like my interpretation of it is like, if they're trying to coerce or intimidate the government, then that's what makes it terrorist, although it's just environmental.
But okay, so I'm going to challenge you, Alicia. What happened to the lobbyists? Because lobbying in the US is perfectly legal.
Now, see,
No, I'm not trying to catch you. I'm just trying to get you to think. I don't know, open up your thinking, because when I challenge you, now you're thinking about it, right?
Yeah, because that could be an example I saw was, I think it was Kyle Rittenhouse, for example, right? And people were saying what he did should have been considered a terrorist act because his motive was, I think, racial, which was rooted in something else, but based on like the legislation, they were saying that it should have been considered a terrorist act, but it wasn't. So I don't know, I guess certain things are considered terrorists and certain things aren't, like we saying. So I don't know why lobbyists, I don't know. I don't even have an answer. I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out.
It's a thin line, because if they stay within the realms of what is allowed from what isn't allowed in their lobbying, but when they go outside of the realm based on the law, then does it become terrorism? I mean, if they become extreme to the point where, like say for instance, well, no, I wouldn't even call that Trump situation lobbyists. That was just outright. What they did on January 6th with storming the Capitol, that was just outright. I don't even know what to call that.
No, that's terrorism.
Yeah.
That was terrorism, right? But if you think about it, the lobbying situation could actually go into bribery and corruption. Do you see where I'm going with that?
For the environment, I mean, Like, well, I can pay you to save the cats, but the cats are the trees.
Because if I'm making Bacardi, I need you to make sure they're there. Think about it. Yes.
Okay.
So I need the cask gorilla tree. I'm just using Bacardi because I know not Bacardi, Campari. So for me, if I am a shareholder in Bacardi, I need the trees to grow, so I need the environment to be what it is. I mean, and I'm just trying to get you to open your mind to think. Terrorism can lead to terrorism as well as it can lead to bribery and corruption.
Ms. Hans, I had an experience today and I'll share it. And it really honestly just goes to show that Bahamians do not take terrorism seriously.
Seriously.
So I went to a meeting this morning, I won't say where, but the meeting I went to, and two of the persons that were with me were police officers, but they were in suits, right? So the building that we went in, I won't say the building either, but this is supposed to be like one of the most secured buildings in the Bahamas, as far as I'm concerned. Very important people in this building. So we walk in and they don't take us through what they call the metal detector. The woman took us around the metal detector. So I said, okay, I got a big bag, the woman got a big bag, the other woman got a big bag, and you got two men in suits. No problem. So we get done with the meeting. So we're walking out. The security guard sitting there. She's like, okay, y'all finished it. So she waving saying, okay, good evening. So the officer in the front of me says to her, hey, she say, hey. He says, why you let me walk in this building with a gun? So she look at him and said, she say, man, you all right, man. This me. Oh my God. I was like, who does that?
Lazy.
Like you said, they don't take it seriously.
You don't, but she doesn't even know this man. She does not know that he's a police officer. She does not know him. As far as she's concerned, he's just a regular Joe Blow walking in with a suit, and he came to a meeting with an attorney. That's all she knows.
And
But
that's just it. Because you're in a suit, you're innocent. That's all it is.
But just as answering the question, as Ms. San said, you compare that, you try that in the US.
Yep.
They'll have 100 police cars, and if you block, they'll have 500.
Thank you. You probably be on your face or shot before you reach the door in a building like that. And you say something like that while you walk in the door. Hey, why you let me walk in you with a gun? And he just stop and he just look at her and then just walk out. And I was like, why did you do that? He was like, just so you sure. He said, I did it so you could see they don't care.
Well, believe me, I walk into what I would call secured buildings all the time, and I don't know most of the people. I mean, I know who I come into, but I know the security, and my bag, I can tell you, it don't get searched. And I'm thinking, I telling you who I come into, and you ain't like you. I get walked around the metal detector. You ain't looking at my bag yet. And I'm being escorted directly to the person, and I'm thinking, okay, so if I really come here to hurt them, then what was to happen? But we don't take it seriously. We don't take it seriously at all.
Listen, when I tell you I went to see a very important person, like if something was to happen to that person, it'd be absolute chaos in the Bahamas. But my thing is, you did not check my bag. You did not check my person. You didn't even tell me I had to walk through the metal detector, and you put me in a room with this person, with an officer that you didn't even know was an officer, and both of them had guns. Like, who does that?
Let's share the Bahamas. I mean, I'm maybe because I'm used to it. I'm used to it. I'm married to somebody who carries one sometimes, and because of their profession, and he's never searched, ever. And I'm like, y'all really just play around here. And sometimes, I mean, obviously sometimes people would know, okay, well, he's an officer and so he can have one, but it's rare. I don't know if I've ever seen him searched.
I get
And
two
not everybody
things
knows
from,
what he does. What did you say, David?
no, I was saying I got two things from Rashetta's story. The slackness in the country, and then it seems like Rashetta is a very important person. She in rooms
Clearly.
with these important people.
David, she in rooms with people that if something happened to them, they could be chaos in the Bahamas, not even chaos in Nassau, chaos in the Bahamas. That's telling all of us something. Rashetta,
But I say if something happened, if something happened to them, I say if something happened to me.
she doing big things, David. And for them to leave her in the
I see
room.
that.
Leave her in the room with them. Yeah, they don't really the level even in police stations. Generally, you could walk in the police station and it's like, okay, what you here for? And I'm thinking, shouldn't you, like, how you just walk into the station like that though? But that's how we are, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of it is cultural. Because I can tell you, when I travel, and I travel a lot, and I'm amazed at the level of security that I have to go through some places. And then when I come home, I'm just so laxed. Coming through the airport itself is just so lax. Like, oh, this is a tourism nation and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but any country I go through the exact same screening everywhere except here. But then that's because, like I said, we don't even think about terrorism. When we think about shooting and killing and all of the things that are happening, we just think it's gang or drugs or whatever it is. It's sad to say, but we are a country that something has to happen for us to have certain conversations. Yeah. And it's sad, but when you work and you travel internationally, then you begin to realize, boy, listen, I hope nothing ever happens where I live, because for me, even working downtown, and I pointed this out to people, who are, you think that they can do something about it. I used to work in a building where I can literally see the cruise ships. And I always say to myself, if I really wanted to do something evil, I come to work one day, I open up the balcony door and I could destroy an entire cruise ship from my office. Because there's nothing that separates. Look at the cruise ships when they're in harbor. Nothing that separates them from the buildings. Think about that. And in terms of the proximity, yeah? And it don't even have to be a Bahamian. You could come here as a tourist if you want to do something bad and do it here and then leave. So yeah, Rashetta, I'm with you all the way. That is something that it cringes me every single time I think about it, because I am somebody, like I tell you all, I risk rate my life. Certain places I ain't go in because, and then certain places I go, I'm that person who know every exit, how to get out. I'm that person who know, okay, if something happen, I can stash my bag here. I looking at all that when I go inside a room or building. I looking at, okay, how I can escape if I have to jump to the window, which window, like all of those things go through my head. But, not everybody does that. So back to our paper. When we start thinking and talking about what the question is asking for, we can see that it's difficult to come up with a consensus. The USA does their thing, the UK does their thing, Europe does their thing, everybody's doing their thing. Did somebody find the definition of terrorism in the Anti-Terrorism Act? I put it in the chat. I don't know if somebody was able to get it. So when we talk about yeah, did you get it, David?
I don't have it, but I do know that. I know we defined in the act who is a terrorist and the
Terrorist offenses.
What terrorist offenses are. Yeah, what they are basically. But we're not like the UK, which I guess specifically say that terrorism is this. So that's just something that I notice. Not to say that I guess how we've defined it doesn't define terrorism itself, but that's just something I've noticed.
Yeah, but you're right. It's not, terrorism isn't defined. A terrorist is defined. Yes?
Yeah, terrorist is defined and terrorist actor is fine. So I was just thinking that, one can deduce that terrorist is a person who, based on the list of offenses, you can define what terrorism is, the act of one who's committing any of those offenses.
I'm just curious as to why, in terms of the way it was drafted, the approach of not just simply defining terrorism wasn't taken like the UK Act. I don't know, Masans, if you know kind of the, I guess, the intent surrounding the act and why it was not drafted in that way.
David, you was our learned colleague, maybe our learned other colleagues could tell us. I don't know. I've been in compliance for the last 15 years. I have no idea why that was written the way it was written.
Okay.
But I am sure the draftsman, because I know the process, the draftsman would have looked at other legislative pieces from around the world, because that's what we do in the Bahamas. We look to see what other people in terms of country, similar size, similar geography, you know what I mean? Similar in nature, that is what we do, and common law, and we look to see what they have, and then we try to either use it as a foundation or use bits and pieces out of it. So I'm not sure why it was drafted that way, but I am sure there's a reason why they did not define terrorism specifically. That's a good question for me to ask the AG. Leave that with me. Let me see if I can ask AG that.
But without a definition, how are we able to define certain acts as terrorism? Like the 6 gentlemen that were killed on Jerome Avenue. They call that a terrorist act.
You have to deduce, just like what they're asking you to do now, based on what a terrorist is, and you put together what the act committed was, and then you decide, okay, the person who committed this act should be determined a terrorist, yes. And if they are a terrorist, then what they did was terrorism. Yeah, that's what I would think.
But was the ultimate goal of that act that she was describing with the 6 guys who was killed, was the ultimate goal for political gain or to try to coerce the government? Like, would that still be considered terrorism?
I would say that's just murder.
I would think that was just basically thought about like due to gang violence. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't consider that terrorism.
Right, but then here we go again. It's interpretation, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because
if I remember correctly,
sorry, go ahead.
If I remember correctly, I understood that one of the guys that was killed was one of a well-known leader of a gang in the Camp Road constituency, and so. To my understanding, it could be just hearsay, but to my understanding, it was gang related, or it was based on drugs, or I'm not sure, but it was basically gang related.
But my thought with it is, I think it's gang related too, and someone was on bail or something of that sort. But even if it's gang related, though, isn't the attack or the murder of those persons by the opposite gang was to get a message to the other gang, as in in a way, it's still to persuade, to coerce them into acting a certain way, like, hey, we now controlling y'all in a way. So to me, it's still somewhat terrorism. It's not to control a government or a country, but it's still a group of people that they're trying to control. Or it doesn't work that way.
And Ebony, I'm thinking the same way about it, because the mere fact that you are instilling fear in so many people, because it didn't just affect the people that got killed, right? They have families, they have friends, they have co-workers, they have whatever. And in a country as small as ours, when something of that magnitude happens, you may not be trying to do it directly to the government, but you're sending a very strong message.
Yes.
Yes?
That's my
So
thought
for
because I
me,
categorize it as terrorism.
it's
Well,
all about what.
it says, oh, sorry. It says under the offense of terrorism that any act that is intended to intimidate the public or to compel a government or an international organization.
Exactly.
the public.
Even though that we are the public, all of us were scared that when that happened. I think I come out my house in days because the thing about it is I literally had just left the exact place that happened. I was there maybe 5-10 minutes before.
Wow.
So when I heard it, obviously in my head, I was like, boy, I ain't going on Jerome Avenue for a hot minute. Because it's obviously that, there's a fear that came with that, right? And then I started thinking, boy, you could be any place and things can happen these days.
That was their intent? You think their intent was to instill fear into the public by doing that?
Anytime you're involved in a gang, that has to be your intent.
Yes, that was their intent.
To instill fear in the public, the general public?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's for the general public. Intended population, not us.
Yeah.
I think I disagree with it in a sense because what they did was to send a message to whom they wanted to send that message to.
Which is the group of people.
It's not
isn't that the public? It may not be the entire public.
No, but it's not the public at large, though. It's a group of people who they need the message to get to. So I understand where both parties are coming from here when you're saying the public. Yeah, but not really the public at large. It's the people who, like they know who they want to get the message to.
Yeah, they got that message. I think by doing that, they got the message to whom they needed to get the message to. And it wasn't like they were in the mall and all of us in the mall.
Yeah. No, in all honesty, I wasn't scared. That didn't scare me because it's not like, I scared to go on Jerome Avenue. They got caught on Jerome Avenue because that's where they got caught. Not because, this, that kind of way.
Yeah,
wherever they caught up with that card, what happened. So I wasn't scared. Don't get me, I ain't saying I'm a killer or nothing, but that didn't scare me because I know they was looking for them people.
It had to be.
Yeah, but you don't know where those people are gonna be the next time.
No, I think they knew
you
it.
Know that you never know where it's gonna come. But what I'm saying is, it didn't scare me to the point where it's like, child, I ain't coming on my house. These people crazy. That's what I mean. Yeah, you never know where you could catch someone. They could have catch them in front of my house because kind of way. But I say to say it didn't scare me to the point because like these gangs when they gang relate. Yeah.
So if it took place in some place like the mall, I'd have been like, all right.
That's a difference.
But it seems like that was set up and targeted. Like
it was. I believe it was targeted. It definitely was targeted.
It was very well planned, I would say, because they knew what they were doing. All of them at once. That had to have been something planned. I don't think it would be.
Wasn't there a straight bullet that hit somebody?
Yes.
So how was that very well planned? I kind of disagree because I'm sorry, I was terrorized.
No, a bullet don't have an eye now. Don't get me wrong. If I see you stand in front of me.
What I'm saying, if I could make my point, you're saying that it shouldn't have affected the general wider public, but that is a public place. It's a public road that people, regular citizens pass every day. I actually had some sort of effect from that because I was 5 minutes away from that spot picking up my kids from school when that happened. So in a way, that sort of did cause terror towards me because I use that public road every day, twice a day to pick up my kids from school, whether it was in a mall. If it's somewhere public where people can access the area, I think it affects the public.
But you just made your point because you go there. I said it didn't affect me, meaning that, okay, I'm not scared to come on my house because that happened, so because you go in that area, correct, that's why it probably, you felt some type of way. I'm saying for me, it didn't affect me to make me scared to come out of my house because I know they was going for those people. So of course, because you go in that area, of course, that would scare you. Agreed.
So every act of crime would be considered terrorism.
But I could say I don't go in the mall very often, so it wouldn't affect me. But you guys are saying if it happens in the mall, it's a big deal.
I think if it's affect I don't know. I can be wrong, but I'm thinking more the line of a mass group of people it affect, like someone come in the mall and just blow the whole mall up. I'm looking at it like that. But if we say anything that would affect you individually, then every person who commit a crime in the Bahamas is an act of terrorism. Because if you see a guy in the next and they have a shootout or something like that, and you're coming out of the club or something like that, that would be considered a terrorism act, a terrorist act.
No,
The thing
because
about-
that. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, the thing about it is we could sit here and argue about it all day, and I just want y'all to have the conversation. It ain't even gonna be for us to determine what is a terrorist act, right? Because terrorism isn't defined. So it's going to be for the I guess the attorney AG's office or whoever is going to bring the charges across to determine what is a terrorism act, because it's just like money laundering. We have the Money Laundering Act, and many people still ain't getting charged of money laundering, even though the predicate offense leads to money laundering. We still ain't charging people with money laundering per se in the Bahamas. So we could talk about what it should and should be, or what we think, or however we see it, and that's all fine and good to have a healthy conversation. But at the end of the day, that's the whole point of the question. It ain't nothing. It ain't clear. There's no global consensus.
We are the
Agreed.
various countries now having our debate about what terrorism really is, if you think about it. So David is wherever I am hands-on is there. Exactly. If you look at it that way.
But this is why I allowed the conversation, because I'm thinking, okay, I want you all to see, this is exactly what the question is saying, because everybody has their own opinion, just like every country have their own interpretation of what it is.
And then maybe if we were a country where we had like constant terrorism acts like the US or UK or whatever, then maybe we would find a need to actually define what terrorism is. But obviously the act was pretty much just like, okay, they say we have to do it, so we can do it. And then we can just find what a terrorist is, but we don't really define exactly terrorism because we don't really have that here. So
yeah, but I agree with you, Rashida. But the thing about it is, I think we need to be forward thinking, because trust me, it ain't hard to do here. It's not hard to do at all.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think by now, with everything that's happening around the world, the Bahamas, we should have already, years ago from 9/11, we should have already had a definition and made an amendment to what terrorism is.
And you mean like how that act just come into force a couple of years ago and it's still on the definition? What are you saying, Rashida? What are you saying?
No, I'm saying what I'm saying, especially when you look at what happened in 9/11.
I'm being facetious.
Huh?
I'm being facetious.
Oh, okay.
I agree with you.
No, yeah, but I mean, yeah. But I think by now, all these other things will happen. Obviously they ain't checking, so.
I just get updated the other day. I said the other day, a couple of years ago, and it's still ain't included, right? After 9/11.
No.
But that takes us right back to the point where they probably just don't look at nothing as terrorism here.
Yeah. See,
that's all it is.
Do you all know anybody that's gotten charged with a terrorist act in the Bahamas?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know of any cases.
The police.
What?
Really? The police?
No, I'm saying that's who some of the terrorists are, the police.
Oh.
Okay, we're not going to talk about our officers like that.
Oh my,
you got to turn the recording off.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you all very kindly.
But Sans, I think, just piggybacking off Rashida, I think that kind of answers part of the question right there, right? In terms of perspective from the Bahamas side, the fact that we haven't defined it, and kind of analyzing that to some extent. And it seems as if kind of the act is just based on being largely compliant with recommendation 5. And so kind of going kind of in that avenue just to assess the Bahamas per se, if you're using that, the Bahamas as a jurisdiction, and then maybe looking at 1 or 2 other jurisdictions. I don't know. Is that the right track? Or I know you're not.
You just took my whole point tonight. The whole point. That's exactly what I got from it too.
Can you repeat that, please, David?
This is why I allowed the conversation, because it answers the question.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that based on what Rashada was saying, it seems as if obviously one, we don't have a definition as to what terrorism is. For whatever reason, we don't know, even though, you know, it's been, I guess, 15 years since the enactment, 2004 to now 2018. But it seems as if we've taken an approach just to take a very broad approach to the definition, and we've just been simply largely compliant with the FATF recommendation 5. So we just kind of took everything from that, put it in legislation and say, okay, we're largely compliant. And so it doesn't seem as if there's much of a thought process to it. And that could be largely due to what Rashada was saying, is the fact that we don't really have quote unquote terrorist acts here in the Bahamas like that. So we just put something together just to say, we have something, we in compliance, so that we don't be blacklisted or be in other problems with the appropriate authorities. So that's the way I see it from the Bahamas side. And I think that may be the approach, at least when focusing on the Bahamas as it relates to this question itself.
And David wants to say that other countries didn't do the same thing, just to be largely compliant.
Well, that's something we would have to assess then.
I don't think they did it just to be largely compliant, because they seem like they actually put thought and effort into it, like where it's coming from a place of experience. But to David's point, I was actually scared too. I was thinking of putting that, but I was scared because it was like, am I throwing my country underneath the bus right now? Like, will these ICA association get some sort of, idea to be like, we need to look into this, So that was like a little fear of mine.
Girl, we are 38 out of 40. Ain't nobody could come for us, because we are one of the most compliant jurisdictions on the planet. So no, you're writing this from your perspective. It's not a yes or no answer. So if that's how you feel about it, we're all entitled to our perspective. And if that's how you feel, and that's will be, let's just be frank. We had a conversation and we couldn't even agree. Yeah. And there's only a couple of us. So you can imagine countries, right?
I feel like we compliant on paper, but not in practice though. Does anybody
agreed?
But besides, to your point, right?
I disagree. I'm a practitioner and I disagree. If you were to ever sit in a compliance officer seat, you would see just how largely compliant we are. The amount of things that we have to go through, we are very compliant, not only on paper, but in practice. And that's been my experience. Sorry, Sam.
No, but to your point about how we, when we do these pieces of legislation, there's a lot of benchmarking that goes into it. So it's not just about we putting it just to put it. More closer to David's point is we're looking at what people are doing around the region. We look at what Cayman put in, look at what Bermuda puts in, look at what BVI puts in, what Jersey and Guernsey have. And we just say, okay, these people are complying with the FATF with this definition. So let's just make sure we have at least this as a minimum. It's definitely more or less sometimes when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Most times, remember I said that earlier, we look at countries that are generally our size, our population, generally that's what we do, right? And so we make sure that we're not the forerunners, yes, and we're not the laggards either, but we sitting in that pool in the middle where, yes, we're largely compliant. And if somebody was to come for us, we could say, hey, well, that country has it, that country has it, that country has it, that country has it. And like you say, it's benchmarking. And we do that with a lot of our laws. And so that's what I said. I'm sure other countries are doing the same thing, because when we come up with certain things, Sam, I can guarantee you that my colleagues in the region, they come to us looking to see what we've done with our legislation so that they can kind of piggyback, or benchmark would be a better word, right?
Yep, for a fact.
So that's how it happens. So when we talk about the USA Patriot Act, that act is very, very wide. And obviously the book tells you it's extraterritorial, right? That act has changed all of our lives. So when we travel, you pretty much strip down to the bare minimum. And there are things that you have to go through. There's process, procedures, and all of those things are because we are living in the Bahamas, but the USA Patriot Act also extends to us, right? Did everybody read all of the things under the USA Patriot Act? The seizing funds and forfeiture, the additional powers conferred, you know, that they control the US dollar no matter where it is on the planet. Yes?
Yes, they do.
Correct. So for all y'all who think y'all in the Bahamas and y'all have US dollar, what you do with that matters. Anytime you spend US dollar, especially if you're using it on your card, it matters. We take it for granted because it's easy for us to do. But if you go to our sister Caribbean countries who very rarely have the use of US, you would see how important it is to be careful what it is that you do with it, what you buy with it. You know, people think, oh, this is my money, this is my card, I can do whatever I feel like doing. Not so in its entirety. You guys need to read how extraterritorial the US Patriot Act is, and then that'll give you another side to terrorism, because you know they have domestic terrorism, right? They get all kinds of terrorism. And they use the terminology. You hear people being charged with it when you hear of major cases, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems as if I guess the US, I mean, I could be wrong, but it seems as if it's kind of more, I guess, religion based in terms of the US. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, because when you think of terrorists, we all, I guess, you kind of go back to that whole 9/11 thing. And I think that's kind of what, you know, a lot of Americans go to as the thing, like as what a terrorist is or what terrorism is. But you know, it has to go, you know, deeper than that. What we see in the US, even with gun violence, is obviously terrorism itself, but I'm not sure whether or not that's something, I don't know if it's classed. Do they classify it as terrorism in terms of gun violence in the US? Or is it just more?
It depends on the event. Because some of it too could be racism if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's a mixture, because and here again, we're not going to have the same conclusion, right?
Yeah.
That's all these conversations are proving.
Yeah.
So there's an example of the effects of US extraterritorial powers that I think y'all could read. That'll help you respond. And the case study from Lloyd's. The examples in the book really can help you all to form, you don't have to form a conclusion, but to help you to analyze why y'all think. I mean, we already know it ain't no global consensus, but why? Why do we think? And that's what they're asking you to do. Why do you think there isn't a global consensus? When you read the examples in this chapter, you can form an opinion. Yes? I don't know if you always read the examples or you all just read the regular, you know, go to unit 2, unit 3, and skip the examples in this specific unit is going to help you. So if you didn't read it, please go back and read it. This is one of the units where the examples matter. Because it'll also help you with your illustrations, yes? Because this is one of the questions where even if you use the Bahamas as your jurisdiction, where do you get the examples from? I unmute because ain't nobody saying nothing.
No, I say you definitely wouldn't get no examples in the Bahamas.
Exactly.
Terrorism in the Bahamas.
If you're using the book, it's very easy to quote.
Exactly.
Y'all get me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, understood.
Correct.
So it seems like you may be able to obviously briefly talk about the Bahamas, but is only to a certain extent because we don't have much examples to kind of illustrate but it's important to go through the chapter and look at other jurisdictions, which will help in providing different perspectives and providing those examples we need to answer the question properly as well.
I told y'all earlier, if you read this unit from start to finish, you could answer 2/3 of your question. And I was serious. I personally, if I had this question to answer, I'd have fun with this. Because pretty much the answer in this unit, all I had to do was add my own thoughts. This question would not have been a headache for me. Now I try to think, but if you all actually read the unit, that's where my mind going. Did you all read the unit?
I browsed through it.
Did you read the unit?
I browsed through it.
I didn't read it in its entirety. I browsed through it. I'm being honest.
I also browsed.
This ain't one to browse through. I would say to you guys, read the unit, all of the examples. It is going to build your answer.
I will read the unit from end to end.
Yeah, it'll help you respond. And I didn't read the unit from end to end, but I looked at the examples because I know the core, right? I know the core material, but the examples, I'm thinking, oh my God, the illustration in the question, these are the illustrations you can use.
I was too busy reading all the articles we posted in the group and overthinking.
Oh, okay, I have to stop posting articles.
No,
then.
Don't stop.
You said be honest. I was there overthinking.
Y'all got the balance.
With the examples though, using their examples from the book, putting them into our own words, but just referencing that we're referring to that particular example.
Yeah, because the thing about it is now, you remember they tell you have to say which jurisdiction. So when you give your little talk about the Bahamas, which I think most of you probably do, then you say, we don't have examples here, but as an illustration, let's look at this, what happened here. You understand what I'm saying?
Got you.
So that's how you're going to have to bridge it because you have no examples in the Bahamas to look at, but you're speaking about a country which you're familiar, which is the Bahamas. So your conversations are going to start off with that. But when you get to the illustrating part, then you have to use illustrations from other countries. And that's expected. You can't make up nothing when they in here because they could fact check your paper. Yes?
I was going to ask if they fact check. Okay.
It's a post-grad diploma. Yes, ma'am, they do.
Okay.
Do you know that this diploma can get you into a master's degree program?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so yeah, they fact checking. And this is why you have to put in all your references, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this,
sorry, Donna. I was just going to say because this actual certification is done in conjunction with the University of Manchester. So just keep that in the back of your minds.
My alma mater.
You went to Manchester, David?
Yeah, I love that school. My alma mater, University of Manchester.
Okay, cool. My daughter went to Nottingham.
Oh, nice, good school.
Yeah. Sorry, Donna.
Yeah, in reference to we spoke briefly just now on the referencing and the fact checking and all that stuff. I noticed for question 2, like basically the whole answer to question 2 is in that document, right? The one on professional money launderers. So basically I'm trying to figure out because most of what I need to use to answer the question is in that. So, I mean, how do I paraphrase and reference that whole thing? I mean, because all the information comes from there. Because that paper is basically the answer to the question.
I can let one of your colleagues answer you because I can't answer that question.
I think the approach, I mean, for this question, yeah, that's what I think that answers a lot of questions. I mean, I look for other articles as well, but I think I mean, the approach I'm going to take is looking at, you know, the Pandora Papers, Panama Papers, and even the whole Russian situation as well, to kind of assist with answering that question as well. So I'll use obviously the FATF thing, but also use those examples to help with trying to appropriately answer the question. That's my approach. But you know,
to the beginning of this assignment, they say to choose a jurisdiction. I was of the opinion that we're supposed to stick to one jurisdiction when we're using examples, because I've heard you say on several occasions that you would use several.
Yes, you're correct. However, if you don't have an example from the jurisdiction, what are you going to do? You cannot leave the illustrating part out of your response.
No, because I don't think the Bahamas has any illustrations for this. So
exactly.
I think yeah. That's why I was going to use those examples.
Right. That is when, like I said, you go and you say, listen, this is the country that I've chosen. However, we don't have any credible examples, right? Or what I would call open source examples. So I am going to illustrate my point using blah, 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 blah. Yeah? You see the bridge, Donna?
No, I understand that part of it. I just was pointing out to him because I've noticed a couple of his responses that he's using several different countries. I don't know which country he was choosing to go with from the onset. And then I just keep hearing him referencing all of these different countries that he's going to use these examples. So I just was pointing that out. But that wasn't kind of where I was going at with my question though. But yeah.
Okay. Also, Donna, okay, I get what you're saying. So, and Ms. Sands, I guess, like you said, it's always good to start off with saying, because you have on top of the page the Bahamas. So it's always good to start off by saying, unfortunately, we don't have any examples. So therefore, I'm taking it in this direction by looking at this jurisdiction to assist with answering the question.
Agreed. Because they've asked you to provide an illustration. You cannot leave that out, else that right there is going to be points that you just left on the table. Yes?
Correct.
Donna, you get me?
I get you, but that wasn't my question, no, but I'll move forward. But that wasn't my question. I mean, I understand the whole choose a jurisdiction, and if you don't have an example in a jurisdiction, then you reference something else. That wasn't my question, no, but I'll move forward.
No. So tell me your question. What your question is?
No, I was saying to you the same way you're saying to us that chapter 5 provides 2/3 of our answer for the first question. I'm looking at the paper that we were told that we were asked to read on professional money launderers, and I'm saying to you that actually has the majority of what you need to answer that question. My question is more like, how far in terms of the referencing and the citing or whatever do they need us to do? Because I'm taking examples and illustration right from there. I mean, because everything is there.
Right, so then you determine if you want your stuff to be 100%. They probably, for me, any marker is going to say at a certain point, okay, we need you to go outside of just this paper. So I would say do additional research to see if you could supplement that paper, even though you can respond from that paper in its entirety. That's what I would doubt. That would be my recommendation to you. You understand?
Okay, yeah, okay, well, that would answer my question then, because yeah. Okay, I'll do that. I'll use some of what's there because it has a lot of information on what I need, but I'll look at some of the stuff as well. But I'll look at the other stuff with relation to the jurisdiction that I am choosing. Because the jurisdiction that I am choosing has a lot of information. I ain't going with a jurisdiction where I gotta be back and forth.
Agreed. Yeah. But I would say don't just use one source material for a question. That's what I want to say to you.
Okay, yeah. So that answers my question then.
Okay. Everybody else good with that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So here it is now. We're talking about the EU, right? And they have their own strategy on terrorism financing. Yes? They have the terror list. They have their global approach. They have a finance tracking program and agreement. They talk about what happens in nonprofit organizations. That there in itself is something different than the US. So we already see, okay, we ain't have no, standard of this definition. And then section 4 talks about the UK's strategy. And here we're talking about big countries, right? Even though the EU isn't a country, that's a bloc. But we're talking about large first world nations. And they don't have the same definition. They don't have the same strategy. They don't have the same things in place. But if you notice, they have a foundation on which everybody criminalizes terrorist financing. Yes? So even though it's not globally a consensus globally, because it's criminalized, you have somewhere to start. And you know already that there is no global consensus, so you know what your ending is. Is the middle piece that got you a little mixed up. But like I say, if you read the examples and the illustrations, you should be able to write that response. So it talks about who's responsible in the UK for implementing the strategy. And then it talks about how they break it up, external and internal. And in the US, they have domestic, and then they have foreign or international. Yeah, so that in and of itself is a strategy. Yes? They talk about what the government does and how it's laid out across the UK, which is not necessarily how it's laid out anyplace else. But you have to be familiar and you have to understand that each country is responsible for dealing with it the way that which they see fit. Now the UK has a definition of terrorism. Can somebody read it? It's on 211. There's a specific definition that the UK has on terrorism, not terrorists, terrorism. Anybody have their books open? Somebody, one buddy, two buddy. Joey, you on tonight? Hold on, let me see if Joey on tonight. Joey was quiet. Is Joey here? Joey, I used to hear you talk. You talk to me every week. What happened? Thanks.
I'm here, but I'm here, but I can't talk.
Can't talk it. Okay, then I ain't gonna mess with you then. Okay, let me see who else I can pick on tonight. Colleen, you done say something. I ain't gonna mess with you, Colleen. Let me go down this because you're all trying to cause me talk all night.
Sounds you want the definition at 4.2.1?
Yeah, that's what I want someone to read for me, Sam. Read that for me, please.
All right. According to the definition in the International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism, adopted in December 1999, the primary objective of terrorism is to intimidate a population or to compel a government or an international organization to do or abstain from doing an act. And it goes on.
Yeah, read all of that. I want you to read till the bottom of the page.
Okay. This is in contrast to other types of criminal activity where financial gain is generally the ultimate objective. Definition: the UK Terrorism Act 2000 extends this definition and defines terrorism as meaning the use or threat of action which involves serious violence against a person, involves serious damage to property, endangers a person's life other than that of the person committing the action, creates a serious risk to the health or safety of the public or a section of the public, or is designed seriously to interfere with or seriously disrupt an electronic system. and where the use or threat of that action is designed to influence the government or to intimidate the public or a section of the public and is made for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, or ideological cause.
Thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate that. You all see that, right? You all see how wide that definition is of terrorism? That could include all of the examples we had in our earlier conversation. Because, like we were saying, you know, it is still fair in us. And then some people had another opinion that, hey, I'm really scared because I know they come for that specific set of people. But you see how that definition includes everything we talked about in our earlier conversation with the unfortunate incident on Jerome Avenue?
What page are we on, please? I stepped away.
211.
Thanks.
David.
Yes, hi.
You see that?
I see that.
Right. That's very different from what we were talking about earlier, because we were saying it's not just for an individual, right? But you see how they are specific to say against a person.
Yes. Yes.
No, a lot of countries don't go to that level, because remember they said now they extended their definition.
I guess the question is it too broad? And that's something we can, I guess, discuss as well, if you are looking at the UK jurisdiction.
But the thing about it is, that's not for you to determine. That's not something that I would even put in my paper because it's already there.
Right. Okay.
We're not actually analyzing the definition. We're just saying that there's no global consensus.
Right. So you're just stating the obvious. Theirs is just very broad. You don't need to explain why it's broad. It's just theirs is broad, and that's why it's different from the US or the Bahamas.
Exactly.
I noticed too, Ms. Sands, that some countries, although they would define terrorism and they would specifically speak to persons, but then they would also have a definition for a terrorist group, which would speak to a group of persons.
Correct. And that, I think, is where you see to the bottom, where it talks about intimidating the public or a section of the public and is made for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, or ideological cause. Because those groups of persons are usually motivated by one of those, yes? Think about ISIS, think about the jihadists, think about those groups of persons. Some of it is based in religion, some of it is based on getting governments to do certain things, and some of it is just based on ideological thoughts. You understand what I mean, Rashada?
Yes, I understand.
Right. So that's where those groups would fit in. And like we're saying, it's broad because it's almost a catch-all if you think about it. There's really not much escaping from this definition. So that's why you hear about so many terrorist events in the UK. So it makes sense now, right? Somebody get killed on the bridge or stabbed on the bridge, or you know, when they had the Ariana Grande thing in Manchester. My child was living in Manchester at that time, and I was panicking like crazy because I think she was at the concert or was supposed to go to the concert, and I'm in the Bahamas like freaking out. But they deemed that a terrorist act, and it's in this book as an example. You gonna say something, Joey or Rashada? Joey, your mic is open, so I'm guessing you want to say something?
Hope everybody can hear me, but I know that early in the call,
Is it me who dropped or is it Joey who dropped? Y'all can hear me?
we had terrorist acts, right?
Okay, so you dropped Joey. I didn't hear your first part. Joey, are you there?
I think she dropped off completely.
Okay, so when she gets back on, she can continue. But just reading that, we can see how it's because of the broadness of it. You know, it's you can justify, yeah, just using that.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I'm now on my mobile. My Wi-Fi is in and out.
Okay.
But it seemed earlier in the group discussion that the Bahamas has very little or no instances of terrorist situations, right? And I'm going to go out on a limb here to say that given the various definitions that I've come across within the UK, the Bahamas, even within certain Caribbean countries, definition of what is terrorism, we could say that the Burma Road riot was a terrorist event. And I say that because there was violence, right? And the ideology of those persons back then was to encourage the government and I think the employers of those employees at the time to change the policies as it relates to the salaries of people of color. Right?
I personally won't disagree with you because I see things differently. But I think other things could be terrorism if you look at. Can you hear me?
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. I can hear you.
I said I would agree with what you said just based on how you put it, right? Based on what we just read with the UK, it fits into a couple of those definitions, yes?
Right.
So if you think about it, the initial conversation about the unfortunate incident on Jerome Avenue, if you look at it from the UK's perspective, I would say too that if that had happened in the UK, that would have been classified as a terrorist act.
No, right. And I say that because I know that the question or they're asking in the question that we kind of narrow it down to the jurisdiction in which we are a part of, right? So there aren't a whole lot of examples, but there are examples there that we could use.
Y'all picking up what Joey putting out?
So just for a quick question. So Joey, are you saying, although, that Jerome Avenue incident, it can be used as an example, obviously it may not fall within our definition under the Anti-Terrorism Act 2018, but of course, Ms. Sands, as you said, the UK definition is so broad. If it had happened in the UK, something like this would be deemed terrorism. And so that's how we can kind of link back examples from the Bahamas, maybe, and tying it in and connecting it.
Right.
Joey, that's what you were meaning?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
They're not, we don't have extreme forms of terrorism, but we do have little instances where we can say, this has happened here. And so it could fit into alignment if we're going to use the UK. And in some respects, well, the US has a whole plethora of definitions for terrorism, right? But if we use FATF recommendation 5, and we use the definition in the book along with some other ones, we could kind of bring it home just a little bit.
Thank you, Joey, for that. See, she challenged you all to even think in another direction. Way to go. This is why I say I like people to talk. We think differently.
I finished now. I can't talk no more.
Okay, thanks, Joey. Trust me, that was worth it. Everybody quiet because they thinking now, you know not a soul talking, Joey. You got them quiet. They like, Joey making some sense. What say you, David? What say you, Rashada? Who else is my learned colleagues on here? Who else?
Joey making sense. So
Who else?
something to think about.
Learned colleagues. I want to hear from you.
You made a lot of sense, Joey. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Rashada, what you think?
Yes, I agree.
Right, you all see that? A different perspective. This is why I encourage teamwork. Everybody writing their own stuff, but together we can get this done. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, now, Rain, Stein. Hold on, I mix up a name every week. Steine. Hi. But look what she just put the hi in the chat. You can't talk tonight either. No?
No, sorry. No, I can't. I can listen now.
Okay, all right. I ain't gonna mess with you tonight then. I can let you listen tonight. Okay. Let me see who else I can pick on. Sophia, I hear a word from you all night. Or Shana. What are your thoughts on the whole conversation of the question number 1 on terrorism?
My thoughts, I had something for Bahamas. Like you said, it's not a wide scale. So I was contemplating to say, should I use that? Or should I use something like in the US or another territory? But since Joey brought that up, I think I'll probably stick with that because looking at UK definition, it has some of these characteristics of it. So I could condemn it as an act of terrorism.
There you go.
Thank you for that confirmation. I just was torn between it. Like they say, trying to put this one together, it was really, really mind-boggling. But I think I can handle it now.
Great to hear. Sophia, what about you? And Estelle, I come in for you. You read for me, but now I want you to think that's all you're doing tonight. I come in for you next, Estelle, after Sophia answer. What are your thoughts, Sophia?
Well, I attacked the question similar to what Joey said. I did find an example of something that happened, and I tried to compare it to another country and saying that if it was viewed by this other country, it may be classified as terrorism. So I went along those lines, same as Joey did.
Okay, and you was being quiet all night. You was being quiet. You couldn't help out. You couldn't help us out. What happened, man? Why you like that?
I have a full house, and I don't want y'all to hear all the noise in the background.
Oh, okay then. So we can let you slide tonight because you say that, right? But the next time when you have a brilliant thought, share it with us, okay?
Much appreciated. Yes, no problem.
Okay. Now who I say was next? Estelle. You read for me tonight, but I hear you make no other. Estelle, yeah, Estelle, you want?
Well, for me, for question 1, I was doing a lot of information gathering. So I was just basically extracting what I need from all of the information that I was getting because it almost like was an overload of what I was getting. I'm almost done with question 1, I think. But based on the dialogue this evening, there are probably some adjustments that I would have to make to what I have already. But I feel comfortable. I'm well on my way to getting this done.
Okay, great, cool. Now, Miss Bodie, we sharing the last name and you were saying a word in class. What happened? You here tonight with us?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
But you being quiet, you weren't talking, you just listening, eh? I love the picture, by the way.
Thank you. I'm still reading. I ain't gonna lie.
Okay.
Yes, mom.
You had a busy week like the rest, that was Dawn, eh? You had one of them weeks, eh? You have one of them weeks, eh?
I did.
Okay. All right, but you know you only got 2 weeks to submit, right?
Yes, mom.
Okay then. But you picking up on this conversation? You gaining anything?
Sort of.
Okay. Well, I hope it helps when you start writing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's move. So if you look at 5, it talks about the characteristics and sources of terrorist financing, right? Because the question doesn't speak specifically to sourcing or the financing, I think that's no reason for you to leave it completely out. Yes? Because that's one of the things as well that makes it complicated to have a standard definition. What do you guys think about that? About that statement?
Yes.
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
I said, even though the number 5, right, speaks about the characteristics and sources of terrorist financing, even though the question doesn't specifically ask anything about that, I don't think it should be completely left out. Because in my mind, that is one of the reasons why we cannot have we do not have a global consensus on the definition. Because terrorist financing is so wide and varied. It's not always the proceeds of criminal conduct. So unlike money laundering, where the mere fact it's money laundering, it's the proceeds of criminal conduct, terrorist financing could be completely legitimate money. It's just used for the wrong thing. So I think that too contributes to the fact that we can't have, that we don't have a global consensus. And I was asking, what are your thoughts? If we don't have a foundation on the funding and the financing sources, then can we actually have a global consensus? I'm just picking your minds here. Ooh, you're all quiet.
I agree.
Why? Hi.
You would think that I am being dishonest, right? But with my paper, that is the last sentence I stopped with. My last sentence actually says, unlike money laundering, terrorist funding, terrorist funding are financed through illegal and legal methods. And I have some examples. And I was like, I had this question in my mind, should I go that deep? That was the last sentence on my paper. And then I stopped because I wasn't sure if I should include it.
If I were writing the paper, hold on, I ain't gonna say that. Donna, great minds think alike. So I'm gonna stick a pin right there with me. What else do you guys think? And then I'm gonna tell you if I were writing the paper, what I'd include from that perspective. Thoughts from anybody else? I've gotten 2 yeses so far, well, 3 yeses. Sam, Estelle answered, and Donna. The rest of y'all ain't picking up what I put in down.
I'm agreeing with you. I didn't think about that like Donna did. Great minds think. I'm thinking like, I guess my mind was agreed with that, but you got me thinking.
Okay, where to go?
It makes sense.
Okay, I touched on it a bit because I saw that was a good point. So I made mention of that also.
Cool. Nicolette, I hear from you all night. You talking tonight or you can't talk either?
Hey, I was here listening, but just helping with homework tonight.
Okay, so what do you think about what I just asked?
Can you ask me again, please? I moved away.
Let me ask you. I'm saying because there is no real foundation for the source of funding and financing for terrorism, that it contributes, I believe it contributes to the fact that there is no global consensus of a definition. Unlike money laundering, that you know for a fact, it has to be criminal proceeds, right? Money laundering starts with criminal proceeds. Terrorist financing doesn't necessarily start that way. It can be legitimate proceeds. So for me, I'm saying in my mind that that contributes to the fact that if you only starting off on the same level playing field, ain't really, you know, it doesn't surprise me that there's no global consensus of the definition.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed with the UK though, it just seemed like they were trying to fit every type of crime or anything that, because even with the fact of it involving serious violence against a person, I don't know. I thought that was a bit much to classify as terrorism, because then, I mean, every crime against a person that you would classify that as terrorism.
The thing about it is that's how they've written the law. And because every country writes it the way that they want to write it, we don't have a global consensus of the definition, right? So it works for them. Although, on the other hand, the Bahamas doesn't even have half of that. You see what I'm saying? We're a smaller nation. They may have written it because of the size of their population. They may have written it. I can tell you, gun crime isn't a big thing in the UK. It's knife. Knife crime is a huge thing in the UK. You cannot walk into a store and buy a knife. I spent a couple of Christmases in the UK with my kids before, and I took my mom and we wanted to cook Christmas dinner, and I couldn't find a sensible knife if it was to save my life. I had to go to a special store that sells knives, and I had to actually fill out a form. It was almost like walking into a bank. I had to say where I was living. I had to give my name. I had to give my phone number, the whole 9 yards, to buy a sensible knife set to cook. So for me, maybe that's why it's like that. You don't hear a bunch of shooting in the UK. They will stab you though.
So I guess maybe the definitions per country have been basically put together on their culture.
Exactly.
And then I don't think it's bad that the Bahamas' definition is vague because of the fact that we don't experience it. So, I mean, I heard the view earlier tonight that, you know, it may seem like just a tick the box to make sure that we met the minimum requirements. But I think based on the jurisdiction being a young country and the fact that, you know, we don't have such heinous or you know, terrible acts. I think it was a smart decision to just make sure that the definition in our legislation covers what is required.
Food, I bring you over there. You want your food?
Right. Donna, we want our food too, but we in class, so we can't eat right now.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
No worries.
Talking to my pet rabbit. Sorry.
Well, what is this? Okay, Nicole, thanks so much for that. So, like I was saying when I said let's stick a pin, if I were writing this paper, I would have a couple of lines in there about that. And this would be one of the, I can't remember the exact word, the question is, I don't know if it's examples or illustrate, but that would be one of the illustrations from my perspective of why, right? We don't have a global consensus, because that obviously in my mind contributes to it. Rashada, what you think?
I agree.
Yeah, so we can't, I wouldn't say leave it out. I'm not saying use a lot of words on it, but I would suggest that you know, just remember that it's inclusive. Yeah, allow your response to be inclusive. If it's in Unit 5, you should try to cover it. And there are some extracts that you definitely want to read. One that caught my eye was the ethically or racially motivated terrorism financing, right? That's a report. So, like we were talking about it earlier, it's not always just religion or political. It could be ideological. Remember when we talked about the groups, Rashada? Some people want people of color to just be wiped off the face of the earth. So that's racially motivated. Some people just want what they consider to be minorities in their country, whether it be people of color, whether it be Native Americans, Native Indians. They have different, I guess, ideological thoughts about them. And so they just think that they shouldn't be around or shouldn't be here. So then there's charities, which is a big deal for the Bahamas, because as you know, that's one of the last remaining recommendations for us that we need to get squared away so we can be largely compliant with that. And as we know from history, that was from experience and from history, that usually was where that's terrorism financing. When you think about terrorism financing from back in the day, you think charities, right? Because monies are just funneled or were being funneled through them. Not today. Terrorist groups have their own source of income. They have investments, they buy things, they do things. So it's not necessarily the same as it was back then. However, you have to think about where it all started and how charities are still being misused today, to be honest. So that hasn't totally gone away, but it's there. And then two, they talk about raising funds from criminal proceeds. That to me is being cheek and tongue, right? That's how you could raise funds from monies that you get from a crime.
Miss Ann,
Hi, Estelle.
sorry not to cut you off. What about GoFund's account? Go Thingam accounts. GoFundMe account, sorry.
What about them? What question you want to ask me about them?
About you were speaking about charities being an avenue to for terrorist financing. Can we look at maybe something like that being one of those?
Is a GoFundMe account a charity?
Oh, but it's people donating monies into an account, is it?
Yeah, but it's for a specific purpose. And usually to set up a GoFundMe account, you should, first of all, know who you giving money to. That's the first thing. And secondly, it should only be done if you know the person. Yeah, I mean, and I don't just give my money to no GoFundMe. Anybody, right? You want to align yourself with reputable charities.
Right.
A GoFundMe account is not a charity. That is somebody trying to raise funds to assist someone else. So it falls in a different category. But it can be used for criminal matters, yes.
Yes, that's what I was, that was my point. That was my point, yes. Okay, that's it.
Okay, cool. So if you look at the case studies, you would see that, you know, terrorist organizations raises money through drug trafficking. They do a lot of things to raise money, right? It's not always charities. There are lots of ways to raise money. A lot of times they use cards too. You know, the pay-as-you-go cards. They do a lot of fraud. And there's a whole list of activities that they do to raise funds. Criminal activities, extortion, robbery, smuggling, counterfeit goods. It's a huge business. Kidnapping for ransom. Some countries, you know, you have to be very careful. I know I had to go at one time to speak at a conference in one of our Caribbean countries down south, and my brother was petrified. He was like, "What? You go in there? How long are you gonna be there for?" And I'm like, "Okay, I travel around the world by myself all the time." And he's like, "No, man, you need to make sure you always with somebody." And I'm thinking, okay, so where are you going with this? And his thing was, man, they kidnap you from a bordering country and sell your body parts, or, you know, kidnap you for ransom. And I'm like, okay, just what I needed to hear before I travel, right? But honestly, that's what happens. You get kidnapped for all sorts of different reasons. And it's not necessarily just to fund terrorism, but it's to fund other criminal activities. And trust me, I landed, I went to the mall, I took somebody with me, and I went back to the hotel. When I got out of that hotel again, I was on my way back to the airport. That's how he had me terrified. Because it's known to happen, right, in that part of the world. In the Bahamas, we don't think about kidnapping. But we have human trafficking and smuggling, you know, as a huge deal. It's an issue for us in this country. But then again, because a lot of light hasn't been shed on it, we don't think about it as well. Online gambling, there's lots of sources of financing terrorism. Yes, it's not just one source anymore. And then you can move funds. It's so easy to move funds these days. Like, mules, you know, you give people money. You could use all kind of alternative system. We get peer-to-peer systems now. I don't even need to go through the bank anymore. I could just, you have the app, I have the app, and boom. Yeah, and then of course we have digital assets and currencies and tokens and all of these other things. So moving money or value is very easy these days. I feel like I'm the only person talking. Maybe because I am a.
We listening now.
Okay. Because I didn't, you know, I haven't stopped yet because I wanted to just finish the chapter. And so we could have a couple of minutes for a discussion. So there are lots of ways to fund it. There are lots of ways to move the money. So we come to page 238 and we talk about the financing of weapons proliferation. And there is a difference. Does anybody know what it means? Well, actually the definition is on page 238. Can somebody read it for me? To the bottom of 238.
I'll read it. SADC's February 2010 status report on combating proliferation defines proliferation financing as follows. Proliferation financing refers to the act of providing funds or financial services which are used in whole or in part for the manufacture, acquisition, possession, development, export, transshipment, brokering, transport, transfer, stockpiling, or use of nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons and their means of delivery and related materials, including both technologies and dual-use goods used for non-legitimate purposes, in contravention of national laws, or where applicable, international obligations.
Thank you. So we can see that there's a difference between terrorism financing and proliferation financing, right? And what's the main difference? I mean, Nicola just read it. Nicole just read it. What's the main difference? You don't answer, Nicole.
Okay.
Let me see if they're listening to you, if they was drinking coffee. Y'all can hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Based on what she read, proliferation is like the transfer of certain things. Like
now,
guns.
Mr. Brown, you be more specific than that. That's the transfer of certain things. No. I need you to tell me what it is. Did you read it? Do you know what proliferation financing is? Did you read it?
Yes, I read it. So
articulate it for me.
Proliferation is like providing funds for the transfer of certain things like illegal things like guns, bombs, and so forth.
Right. What else?
Yeah. Now I'm trying to say, whereas terrorist financing, I'm trying to see how it's different, how it's different.
Can I say terrorist financing will be the financing of the act, so, or the organization like ISIS or the actual bombing of a bridge, but the proliferation financing would be the raising of the funds to acquire the actual weapon used, so like a bomb or some chemical or biological weapon of mass destruction.
Could one happen without the other?
Yeah, I think so.
Could one happen without the other?
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Okay, how you can explain on that?
Because remember, when you talk about dual use goods, you could use the same goods for in the technology space, in the technological space. You could use the same goods for household cleaning that you could use for bombing. So yes, you could finance goods, yes, without having a terrorist act. Don't military the military, they have to buy guns all the time. Don't governments finance bombs?
So it's really weapons? It's really based on how they are used.
It's used, yes.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yes, it's the use that makes the difference. And that's why it's called dual use goods. Because everybody have a gun. Not everybody, I don't have a gun, but I'm just saying, right? But a gun in the hands of a police officer is different than a gun in the hands of somebody who wants to murder people just for murder people's sake. Yes? It's the same gun. Like, I don't know how you all grow up, but when I was growing up, I used to mix, anybody ever do this? Ammonia and the Ajax to clean the tub, right? Because I'm trying to do it like in different stages. I want to do it all one time. And feel like
And then you gotta run out the bathroom.
Listen to me, yes.
Yes, that's dangerous. I did it.
Exactly.
I think we know about that.
So that is for all of my cured people. All y'all who 35 and no, we ain't talking to y'all, we talking to y'all.
Exactly.
I did it. Nobody changed it.
Right. So dual use goods, right? Is a huge deal because you need tanks and all of the equipment needed for the army, right? But then in the wrong hands, that same equipment does a lot of damage.
Don't they have like where only certain people could acquire those things?
And don't we have laws against guns that we don't make in the Bahamas and our streets are filled with them?
Yeah, but I mean like from reading it, they were saying like sanctions or some sort.
We have laws to stop guns too, Brown, and I mean they still get in the Bahamas, eh?
That's true, but I can't see a tank getting.
Let me tell you how things that happen. You go in, like you're in the remember when the US pulled out of Afghanistan the other day? You really think they pick up and carry all them things back to the US with them? That was the question.
And them things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't see them leaving a whole tank. I'm just.
Did you watch? Were you following that story where they were just trying to get people out of the country?
And then the Taliban seized those items. They were seized.
All of those items the Taliban seized. The lives of people were more important than the millions of dollars they spent to get those equipment. They were just trying to get people out the country. They weren't trying to put no tank on no warship or however they get them, wherever. So now, who has control of the country and who has control of all of that military equipment? whatever was left. They may have taken some things with them, but there are lots of things I'm sure was left because that was a huge deal in the news cycle.
Yeah.
Anybody was watching or following that other than me and Joey? That was a disaster of epic proportion from a humanitarian perspective. Did you see people running after the planes?
Yeah, jumping off them.
That was terrible.
Exactly. So that is how things like that happen. It isn't necessarily that, oh, we send them there and they take them. Look at now, look at currently, who has control over where the bomb thing happened in Ukraine? Who's controlling it? Wasn't it taken over by another country?
The Noble League.
Right. So whose hands is it in now?
Russia. Eh?
Exactly, but I'm just trying to say that is how things happen. So it didn't go to be,
Yeah,
it,
they see
supposed
is
to be like that.
seizure.
It's been seized. How many times have you heard? I don't know if you've heard, Mr. Brown, but they have modern day pirates. They seize ships and all of their assets. There are certain ships that don't go particular routes because they're trying to avoid, I think it was Somalian pirates at one point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's not the whole idea for the bad guys to have the things, right? But it happens. And so they have to put measures in place because dual use items can do lots of good, but they also can do lots of damage. Yes? You getting me, Mr. Brown?
I think, sorry, with the whole
Yes, ma'am, I do.
US
Sorry, Joey.
I was a West extraction out of Iran the other day. What they had hoped was that their local military was strong enough to combat, you know, any resistance from any groups, but
You're breaking up, Joey.
And so when they overthrew them, then they seized all of the equipment and
You're breaking up.
Hello?
You were breaking up, so I didn't hear
Can
you.
you
We
hear me
didn't
now?
hear you. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Right. So I was saying that the US went in order to help the people of Iran, you know, become soldiers and have a military base and a force and all of that. And so they left all of the equipment thinking that the local army would be able to tackle this stuff. But the Taliban overthrew the local, you know, defense force or army. And so that is how they were able to seize all of the tankers and weapons and all of that good stuff. Because they basically
Right. So, you know, there are lots of things to consider when we talk about dual use goods, and the EU has a whole regime around it. Most countries have a regime around the exportation and importation of dual use goods. And the risks that arise from weapons proliferation financing. Because I mean, and obviously we don't live in a perfect world. So there are some people that need to have weapons, right? And then sometimes there are some people that you need to keep weapons out of their hands. But how do you determine where's the weapon going to end up? It is just a thing, an inanimate object, right? By itself, a gun can't do nothing. A gun needs a person. By itself, the Clorox bleach can't do nothing. But in a lab, it can kill COVID-19. It can kill the AIDS virus. It can kill bacteria, yes? But by itself, it is just something sitting on a shelf. But if used in the right or wrong way, depending on how you look at it, it can do harm and it can do good. And that's why it's called dual use. Yeah. So my admonition to you all would be to ensure that you read Unit 5 from start to finish, and then ensure that you can answer the question with your analytical skills intact. Anybody have any questions about Unit 5 before we go and go back to, I think it was Donna's question initially at the beginning of the class? Anyone have any question on just what we talked about in the unit?
No, ma'am.
Okay,